Greetings. So we have a little bit of backstory with the Spear in the Stars comic. So this is a mechanic who's asking someone what this is. And he goes on to explain it's a skull. Because a mechanic doesn't know what a skull is. What is a skull? And it's one of the aspects in the story is that these people don't die. They can't be killed. Well, they can be to some extent, but generally speaking, they can't be killed. They can be maimed, mashed, ground up, but some instance of their inner being is still alive. And you have a whole population of people who have never, ever have experienced threat of death. It creates in them some kind of extreme character flaws, one could say, because if you think about how much of our daily existence kind of comes out of, well, we can't do that, we might get hurt. Well, why don't we want to get hurt? Because it might cause some significant injury or possibly death. That's why people, generally speaking, don't drive down the highway at 110 miles an hour, because if a deer comes out or a tire blows, that's pretty much curtains. In spite of all the crumple zones and airbags and safety features that are on vehicles, it's pretty well known that it's curtains. And so you have a whole massive population of people who don't have that fear. And that's with this right here, is that these figures, they're floating in space and they're frozen because they suffer the usual effects of decompression and absolute zero, but they're not dead. And they can't die. And when they're brought into the ship after the ship is repaired, they will thaw out and then resume their duties. And it's a trope, I suppose you could call it, in many science fiction and superhero stories, where you have characters that can't be killed and they have these super awesome speed healing capacities. But that's not the case with these fellows right here. So there is some extent, so obviously with the decompression there's going to be all sorts of cellular damage, and they recover from that. But something like this fellow, an accident had basically taken his head off. And there he was, staring at his own body, kind of like a cartoon. And so all of this hardware was put in place for him to resume his duties, because his body isn't dead and his head isn't dead, and together they're not dead. And there's no reason why they should be alive. But he functions in this manner. And this is just an extent on some of the characters in the story, in the greater story. I mean, the whole story is evolving, even from these 3, 4, 5 pages. And he's just simply explaining to this technician, that this was once a human being. And that human being was dead. And that death was part of a period of time that doesn't exist anymore. Dead is dead. Nearly impossible to explain death to someone who has never experienced death. It does not exist in the Empire. You and I, we can't die. So death does not exist. Not here. Then how can this poor bastard be dead? Death happened long before now. I can't explain it right now, not to make any sense. A memory that survives more than 3,000 years. So there. 3,000 years, a whole civilization of gods who can't die. They don't have laser beams coming out of their eyeballs, and they don't have telepathic abilities. They're not superhumanly, monstrously strong unless they have machinery in place to make them so. Oh, local trains coming through. It must be about 8:30 at night. That usually is when it happens. So, yep. Civilization of people who can't die. And what kind of characteristics do you think are in the minds of a group of people who have no fear of death? Anyway, something to think about. A little touch onto the Spear in the Stars comic. I've neglected it for getting other obligations taken care of. I work on it piecemeal here and there, but generally speaking, I've been neglecting it. So anyway, there's that. Thank you for watching.